time for another Agave sessions. As always, super excited about who I get to have on this afternoon. It's a group that I am very minorly familiar with. It's kind of through associations that I really found out about these guys. You guys have seen me talk about Borderlands 1,800 times, and I love the Borderlands. But these guys are doing some really interesting work on things that are not only agave specific, but they've done a lot of work in the Baccanora space. You've seen me mention some of their work, I think, recently on some of the Facebook groups where we're talking about kind of Baccanora sustainability and stuff like that, and kind of some newer events that have happened in the last few months that have been really exciting. And my guests this afternoon have been working pretty diligently, not only in that stuff, but a lot of the ecology that goes on around agave and agave spirits production in the Baccanora region. And it's going to be a little interesting today. It's our first time with multiple guests at the same time. So I would really like to welcome Valeria Canedo and Leah Ibarra of the Sonora Silvestre Colectivo Sonora Silvestre, which is an ecology group of young scientists who are working to kind of study the sustainability of the environment around the borderlands, particularly in the state of Sonora. They do a ton of interesting projects, and I'm really excited to have them on this afternoon. I think we have them both on now. I see them. Hello, Leah. Hello, Valeria. How are you doing?
Thank you for the invitation.
And for the amazing introduction.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was so difficult for me to do it because you guys do so many cool things that I didn't really know how to get it into one or two sentences. But luckily, we have the whole hour to talk about this. First of all, how are you both doing this afternoon? Everything good?
Perfect.
Excellent. Where are you guys joining us from? Are you in Hermosillo?
Yes, we're located in Hermosillo.
Excellent. So just to kind of fill in a little bit of the context, you guys have had me, those of you who watch the show might remember my show, the episode a while back with my good friend Doug Smith, who works with EXO, which is a really wonderful coffee and mezcal program in Tucson, Arizona. But Doug is also very active in a conservation group called the Borderlands Restoration Network. And that's kind of how I first learned about Colectivo Sonora Silvestre and the work that they've been doing. And then I just kind of by happenstance happened to read about the recent certification for Baccanora, which I saw your name come up in that group. So I kind of started to make the connection, and I was really excited and wanted to reach out to you. So thank you again for coming on this afternoon. I guess we'll start out with kind of an introduction to the both of you and the group itself, because I know one of the things that, you know, when I first started researching the group, one of the things that I was really a little bit confused by was, you know, I saw discussion about Senko, and then I also saw a little bit of discussion about Colectivo Sonora, right? So what is Colectivo Sonora and what is Senko? How do they fit together? And if you could tell us a little bit about both of your roles with the group.
Okay. Well, Colectivo Sonora Silvestre started back in 2017. We started as students. We're still students. And so we started doing a lot of projects under the Colectivo Sonora Silvestre. And then along the way, we find out that we needed to have a legal figure, right? So we actually joined a group that was bigger with other people that have experience on different areas, other scientists, artists, and we created this really cool platform called CENCO, or Centro de Colaboración para la Ciencia y Cultura, where you can go as a young researcher or as a young artist and start your own project with our backup and our help, and support of the whole organization. So that's how CENCO became CENCO, or became a thing. And then CENCO adopted the Colectivo as their ecology part, or the ecology department. So every project that has something to do with ecology, goes through Colectivo, but it's a part of CENCO. So that's why you find both names on there.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything?
I think it's fine.
So yeah, basically that's the reason. But it's really cool. I mean, we get to work with other people with other backgrounds, so our projects are more integrated than they were before, and we get to support pretty cool ideas that even though they're not about our area, we really believe in, and it's a great opportunity for all of the people that participate in the organization.
So when you say other areas, what are some of the other areas that might not be your areas, but that you guys get to work with through Senko? Is it like, when you say not ecology stuff, is it like more arts stuff? Is it more like what are some of the examples that you guys are trying to work with?
Well, the organization have 3 different areas. What Lea mentioned before was Colectivo is the ecology one, and we have Milpa, which is the one that works on the cultural and like society programs, and we have Genko, which is I'm translating it.
Don't worry about the translations. We'll talk about it at the end, but people can go to the Senko website and we can see all because there's links there to all the different groups, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the last one, it's a program that we create to like empower students and get them like to be on the field of their careers since the beginning. It is more like a professional development will be in English. And right now that's like the main 3 areas we're working with. What else?
Pues sí, eso, ¿no? Son las 3 áreas. Yeah.
I think you also asked about a role.
Yeah, just wondering what both of your roles are within Colectivo Sonora.
Okay. Well, we are co-directors along with another person, David Gastelum. The 3 of us, we direct the Colectivo Sonora Silvestre.
And we are part of the board of Senko.
Excellent, excellent. So you both went to school for ecology?
Biology.
Oh, for biology. Okay, and then so obviously Colectivo Sonora focuses on biology, not just biology, but also the greater ecology, right? And how everything fits in. So I kind of want to talk about the Agave maybe last, because I feel like that's where I might have the most amount of questions.
Sure.
So I would like to briefly talk about some of the other projects, because I know you guys are studying bats. You're tracking other wildlife. You've worked very heavily on the monarch butterfly population, right? So let's start with the monarch. So what do you guys do with monarch? Is it really just kind of tracking migration? Is it trying to kind of help make it a more like keep them safe when they're in the Sonora area? What kind of work are you guys doing with the monarchs?
Right now we're not doing the monarch right now because of the but we're going back to 2015. Yes, we start working in this like monitoring program. We did trying to find monarch butterflies in Sonora in different regions. That was when we were in 2nd semester of our career. We were really, really young. So we started with this network with Sky Island Alliance, which is an organization based in Tucson. We started working with them for at least 3 years. We did this monitoring in, I don't have exactly the numbers, but I will say at least half of Sonora was monitored by us, and it was a whole group of students. We did this amazing effort based on what we were trying to learn about it, because we were really young students by that moment. So we were learning about how to do biodiversity monitoring in general, because by that moment we also had another 2 projects going on. So I don't know how to say it. I was like,
we're also monitoring the milkweeds, right? So what we were trying to do is we were trying to find out if the monarch butterfly did pass through Sonora on their migration. And we did find some monarch butterflies, and we find the milkweeds. We found native milkweeds. It was a pretty amazing project. Like Valeria said, it was like for us, a very good learning experience. It was the first project that we did ever, and we have a lot of love to the monarch butterfly because of that. Yeah, that's basically what we did. We engaged a lot of students too. Myself, I was one of those students that Valeria engaged with that project, and I think that the impact for that was very big. It empowered a lot of students to realize that not just we didn't just have to be in the classroom, that we could actually go out in the field and get data and get important data and apply our knowledge to something actually professional, and that we didn't have to wait for us till we graduated. So that was a very important aspect of the project as well.
I have some numbers. I think we found like 100 and something mother butterflies. We found I think 15 species of milkweed, and we train 6,000 people per year.
It was a pretty big project, and it opened also the discussion about whether the monarch was or not, or wasn't using this the Sonora state to pass or to go through the migration. So I think it was a very cool project. It was very nice for the beginning.
We were field every weekend, every weekend during the migration.
You were in the field every single weekend?
Yes.
Man, that's what I absolutely miss, because I lived for about a year and a half. I lived in Oaxaca, like doing more operations management, and just being out in the campo, like that's something and now I live in like New York, like right next to New York City. So, and I'm from the desert, right? So just being out in the field and being stuff like that is just something that is so close to my heart, and I just absolutely miss so much. It's just having a job that allows you to be in that kind of environment is just so fulfilling. So I can only imagine, obviously it comes with a great deal of responsibility, because it sounds like you guys were running this incredibly massive program with all these different, at what I'm guessing is a very young age, which seems like it would be very, very daunting to wrap your arms around. But that's really, really incredible.
Thank you.
Specifically to the monarchs. So I'm guessing, maybe I'm wrong, were they present kind of in all over the state, or was it geared a little bit more towards the eastern part of the state? Because I'm from what I've seen or remember reading is that it's kind of a little bit more through New Mexico and Texas that they migrate. So was it kind of a surprise to find them, or was it something that you guys knew was already there and it was just about trying to actually find them?
What we basically focused on was on the milkweed.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Milkweed coordinates of the herbarium collection. So based on that, we also try to see, like, okay, we have this population. For example, I would give you an example. There's an endemic milkweed in the ¿Cómo se llama la playa? No. There's a beach close to Ciudad Obregón.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a endemic species there. So we were like, okay, if there's an endemic species from this area, Guatabampito, thank you. We go and look if we can find any egg, any caterpillar, anything that we can show us there is something feeding on this plant, because milkweed is a host plant for the monarch butterfly. So if there is milkweed, there's gonna be some monarch butterfly there. So that's what we were looking for mostly, and we found it basically all over the state. I would say, we were in the coast, we found monarch. We were in the high mountains, we found monarchs. So yep. The thing is, you don't know if it's a local butterfly or if it's a migratory one. So that was a tricky thing that we were trying to train people to try to see the difference. Because a local one you can see is like a small, tiny, like more skinny like body, and they have a different kind of flight. as a migratory one. So that's what we were trying to teach the other people who were like living in those areas that we found some, to understand how to identify these species. They haven't, because they have like 2 or 3 species that looks almost the same as the money butterfly. So basically,
Oh, so it's not even monarchs, but they just look like monarch. It's not a different type of monarch. They just look like
No.
monarchs.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. And for anybody who doesn't know, Ciudad Obregón is pretty far south, like pretty close to Sonora along the Gulf of California. For those watching that aren't super familiar with Sonora, it's kind of south of really. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, but it's where things start to actually get a little bit more green. You're getting out of the Sonoran desert and you're getting kind of closer into that mountain environment where a little bit more maritime influence. So it's a little bit greener. It's a very different environment than what you find in like northern borderland Sonora, which, you know, from my experience, you know, it starts to get into what I imagine, like I was in Michoacan at the beginning of the year, right? So it's a little bit more of kind of that mountainous, cooler environment that the monarchs are passing through.
Yep.
We had somebody ask, what was the name of the monarch organization in Tucson?
Sky Island Alliance.
I'm sorry. What was the question again?
What was the name of the group that you were working with? Somebody from Facebook was asking, what's the name of the group that you guys were working with in Tucson?
The one
Was it
was the Sky Island Alliance.
Sky Island Alliance is the name of the group, for Stephanie, who's watching at home. Thank you very much for asking, Stephanie. Let's see, what else? What is one of the other projects I was really curious? Oh, wait, before we leave the monarchs. So you guys organized a group that involved up to 6,000 people, like monitoring these areas. Is that what I heard you guys say?
Well, they were trained to identify this species and to identify if it was a migratory or not a migratory butterfly. So we trained 6,000 people.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's really, really incredible. That's great work, man. So that was one of your first projects?
Yeah.
That was the first one. Actually, we won like the first award that we won. We were 19 by that moment, and the first one on believing on us was Gary Naphan.
Oh, really? I had Gary on like 2 or 3 weeks ago on the show. He's so wonderful. He was with me actually when I was in Michoacan.
Yeah, he was the one. He was the first one that believed in us. It was like, they want to do something, and I have like a small grant, but they're gonna have it, and that's how we start working. And I think the 6,000 is based on we were also really, really involved into environmental education. So we were also going to the field. We were also going to like rural towns, going to the schools, like elementary school, high school, everything we can find to talk to them about these important things. And I think that's why it's that amount of people. And we also have a lot of students working with us. We were all volunteers, and it was great to see like how they were also learning, doing the same as us in that moment. And yes, some of them have still doing some environmental education, the students that were involved.
That's so great. I love it. What was the other project I wanted to ask you guys about? It was the Bavispe River stuff, like doing some reforestation that you guys have been active in. Can you talk to us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, we recently did that project last year in collaboration with Primero Conservation and Greater Good. So we planted 1,000 and something trees on the Bavispe River. This was to restore the habitat for the jaguar. It was in Granados, that was a municipality. And it was a very fun experience. It was very, very fun. We tried to grow 1,000 willows, which we didn't knew that it was so hard. So it was a very cool learning process too. We would just go out of the field, pick up some branches from them, because you can grow them like that, like a vegetative reproduction. And we just got some branches of them, and then we just waited like for a month to see if they did grow roots or if they didn't. most of them didn't the first time, so that was very frustrating. And then we went again. We ended up going like 5 times, and it was supposed to be just one. But yeah, at the end of the day, we make it, and we did that on July last year. It was a pretty cool project, really, really cool. And yeah, and I mean, for the Jaguars, like, what else can you expect? Like, what else do you want? You know, it was very nice. We spent like 5 days, I think, in the Bavispe River.
And we also have the help of Naturalia.
Oh yeah, we invited Naturalia, which is another organization based here in Mexico, to help us plant trees. So it was a very multi-collaborative project, for a very, very good cause that we had the opportunity to do.
That's fantastic. So how did you guys go? How did you two ladies go from doing more kind of biological stuff and then transitioning into working in agave? So was it through bats, or did you guys start working with agave and then start focusing on the bat stuff? How did you all start working with the Baccanora producers?
That's
Great
a really
question.
I would ask that same question to myself.
How do we do this?
I think the first thing I will say is Francesca.
Yeah, so we had the opportunity to do an internship at Borderlands Restoration greenhouse or nursery, and we became really good friends with Francesca Clevery.
She's a plant
Program
native plant program manager. Yes.
And she's amazing. And she was just like, she had all these agaves on the nursery, and she recently had this really good deal on a project restoring the habitat for bats. And just talking to us, she was like, why don't you guys like do the same on the other side of the border? I think it will be pretty cool. I mean, it's the same habitat, everything is connected, right? So that's basically how it started. And we're like, yeah, sure. I mean, of course we can grow 1,000 agaves. That's very easy. And so, yeah, and that's how it started. And it started with Bat Conservation International. So we started protecting the bats. And then we realized that here in Sonora, we have a different dynamic, we can say, because, well, agave is historically used for a traditional beverage, which is Baccanora, that we all love and we all know. And because of this, the history of Baccanora, it's very complicated as a product. It was banned for 77 years by the government. So even though it was a tradition since, you know, the beginning, people weren't allowed to make it. So there was this like prohibition on it. And then what people did because of it, of course they didn't stop making Baccanora, they continue. But what people did was, instead of growing their own crops, they would just take it from the wild. And so we can see this decrease in the populations of specifically Agave angustifolia, which is the one that's used for Baccanora. We can see a huge decrease on those populations because of this prohibition. So it was like inevitable to just, you know, get to that part, like the society part and the traditional part and the economic part, of course, because it's something like so traditional from our state. So then we decided that the way that we could make a bigger impact was like to bring all these different issues together and try to find a solution that could actually address the different problems that we were seeing, right? Everything trying to protect the bats, but also trying to protect the wild populations of agave, their resilience, and also trying to protect the traditions that Baccanora, of course, is, and the economic for the small towns, which they depend mainly on the production of Baccanora. So it's not just about, oh yeah, we're gonna go plant agaves for bats for them to feed. There's like that's a bigger problematic behind all this. So if we don't address all these other things that are going on, whatever we do is not gonna have the actual impact that we're searching. So I think that's how we started thinking. Then we have to involve the producers, right? And we have to educate them in terms of ecology, of course, and in terms of bats and the importance and all this and what they can do, how they can get involved. And that's how we created the FOBADES program, which is el Fondo de Baccanora para el Desarrollo Sostenible, which aims to bring the Baccanora industry to a more sustainable path, and make our work as conservation biologists and other ecologists easier, right? And bring like together the scientists, but also the production and the economic part. It was very challenging. It is very challenging still, but it's a very cool project. We really, really love it. And we were very lucky to be able to create it from the beginning. And yeah, it's also been like a very good learning process. Do you want to add anything?
I think I would add just Portland Restoration Network is our fiscal sponsor. So that's other the reasons we are like, they were like, hey, do you want to do a project? We can help you. So that was really helpful to like to be able to create this project. I think it was just that, just explain why.
Oh, why, like the relationship?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they are like our mentors. They're so amazing. It's such an amazing organization. And also Bat Conservation International, wow, like all the work is so amazing. And they have been just great with us, like always believing in us. And of course, we have a lot of help from these two organizations for us to develop like this kind of project. But yeah, it was a very important key to the project too.
Yeah.
I have a kind of a question about cultural relationship with the land in Sonora, because most of my relationship or most of my experience working with farmers and working with producers has been in southern Oaxaca, where there's obviously historically, culturally, a very close connection to the land, right? And not to say that there isn't in northern Mexico, it's just that my own personal experience is not in the field in that part of Mexico. So is that same connection very present in the farmers and the rural communities in northern Mexico? Or was it a little bit more kind of educating and working with farmers? What was that experience like? So I guess my question is there a cultural difference in how closely connected people are to the land in northern Mexico, the way that they are in southern Mexico, where all of my time has been? Or is it a little bit different?
Okay, well, we've never been to central southern Mexico to study these relationships, but I think they are very similar. Like almost 70% of the state is rural here in Sonora, and you mainly go.
It's a big state, right? People don't realize that Sonora is a very big state.
Big state of Mexico.
It's a really big state. And almost everything is rural, and they very much depend, like the economy very much depends on crops and
Cattle.
Thank you. And Baccanora production. So yeah, I think they do have a pretty strong relationship, and we have been going to the Sierra for the past six years. So we got to meet a lot of people from different places, and mostly they teach us a lot of things. It's very amazing the amount of information that they have. Yeah, it's like empiric knowledge, I guess, but it's very rich, and they are very tied to they're very tied to the land, and they're very concerned about it, and they are making discussions about resilience and about climate change because they're worried about their crops and they're worried about their economies. So yeah, even the kids, remember, like the kids like would tell you the name of every tree, every plant that they see. So yeah, they do have a very, very strong relationship, and it's very amazing. And it's not like we go and educate them. We just go there and we're like, do you know that the bat could do this? And they're like, oh, like I knew that something was doing it, but I just didn't know that was bad. So it's not like educating them, like yeah, it's not like doing like a full education. It's just like filling those gaps, right, with the correct information for them. But they already know so much. We get to learn a lot from them.
Yeah,
it's very, very cool, the interaction and their relationship with it. So I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think it's fine.
So when you started working with, so the the Fondo Baccanora, that's one of your newest projects, right?
Yeah.
That's a very new project. So, one of my questions that I had was, you say that the over harvesting, or not necessarily the unsustainable harvesting of the maguey, of the agave for Baccanora, right, is related to people just kind of cutting down wild populations of agave. So now that Baccanora is legal to commercialize, does that put those, I would imagine that puts the populations even more at risk than they were when people were cutting down, were just kind of cutting down, illegally, if you know what I mean? So, with the Fondo, was it trying to play catch up, or you guys feel pretty good about where you're at and just trying to like set the tone for the future? You get, so was the agave more at risk now that Baccanora is more commercial, or was it more at risk historically?
Well, there is different risk.
Yeah.
Well, if we're talking here, for example, now the producers can grow the agave, right, in their lands, but that, if they don't do it, if they don't preserve like genetic diversity, it will be a monocultivo, like monocultivo. Yeah. So that can affect it. I would not say it is. I think it is. I don't know how to answer that one. That que iba a decir que igual están con peligro por la diversidad genética, pero nosotros están en peligro porque se quitaron todas.
Okay, so what Valeria was trying to say was that she thinks that right now they're in danger in terms of resilience, because making a wild plant, making it or turning it into a crop, you start these monocrops and they start losing their genetic diversity, and it's something that we saw in other industries like the tequila one. So that's like the main hazard that the agaves angustifolia have here in Sonora right now. But before, they were taken out from the wild, so it's like different kind of risk, but they're still taking it out from the wild. And I think to answer the same question, I do think they're more in risk right now because the demand for Baccanora is growing, and it's growing very fast. And people here still make Baccanora in a very traditional way, which doesn't really allow you to make like really big like volume of Baccanora or productions to satisfy that demand that is growing and that we have been seeing. And there's also some Baccanoras that actually says on the label, it says like, this is from wild agave, like 100% wild agave. So they're still doing it. And that's something that you can address with, of course, environmental education. And it does address it. The FOBADES or program does address that part as well. We do explain the importance of genetic diversity. We do explain the importance of just not taking the crops out of the wild, or if you are going to do it, just plant, for every agave that you take out from the wild, and plant 5 agaves in the same place. And we have had a really good response about it because the producers were already concerned about the genetic diversity, because we do have this school of tequila to teach us what to do and what not to do and what the consequences can be. So they were already concerned. So what we did was like, oh, we are also concerned about that. Not because we make Baccanora, but because we are trying to make conservation. So it's something that we have in common. And the thing that we did is like, this is a way that you can address that you can avoid having bad results, or you can avoid the decrease in populations or on resilience of your crops in terms of climate change or any environmental stress. So they actually, we had a really good response. Yeah, we are still working on that too.
Yes.
You're still working on educating the farmers, or?
We're still working like in a way, yeah.
To educating, get, but working with
them more involved. Yeah. Not precisely educating them, but to get them more involved and to adopt this
that's what
new ideas Yeah, because sometimes it's hard because the producer has been producing Baccanora for like his family, like for 100
like the
years.
same way as his grandfather did, and that's
the thing.
We're not trying to change like their traditions, but we're trying to implement solutions for what is gonna be probably like the problems in the future.
Yes, and we also see a very interesting thing is that new generations right now are taking over the industry from their parents. So we do see like this very new generation of producers, of Baccanora producers, that are very, very interested in this other ecological part, which is very cool because it allowed us to work more, I say, like it allowed us to work better with them, to find a solution to that specific place. Because of course, every field is different, as you already know. Yeah.
I guess, I think that maybe that's what I was trying, maybe that's what I was trying to ask, or maybe what are some of the, like you said, right? The producers have been producing Baccanora the same way or very close to the same way as their abuelo, bisabuelo, you know, for 100 years, whatever. What are some of the examples of some of the changes that you saw that you've tried to work with them? Is it just leaving more agave to flower? What are some of the, what are some of the things that you saw maybe could be done better from a sustainability point of view?
Yes. Okay. I would say, well, we can start. The first thing we do, we are leaving 1% of the field to flower. We're working basically in 9 or 10 hectares. It's not an acre. It is, I don't know the difference.
I think hectáreas es como algo como 2.2 acres in a hectárea or algo así, something like that.
Okay. We're leaving flower like 1% to flower. We are using. There is some plaques.
Some what?
Like levels. Como levels.
Etiquetas.
Yeah, labels.
No, I was talking about. Okay, there's an insect that feed on agave. This is a agave weevil. There was some idea that was here, and what we are doing to prevent like the loss of the plants, we are putting like traps for that. So we are catching the adults before they can reproduce themselves. That's one of the things we do. That's like a part of it's la red monitoreo de plagas. It's like the monitoring network for like this species specifically. That's what we are developing with this fondo. Also, we are setting trail cameras for the wildlife, and we're leaving like a water. I never know how to say this word in English.
¿Qué cosa?
El agua, pues.
¿Cómo se dice en español?
Yes.
Bebedero.
Yeah, we're living like bebederos for wildlife. How do you say bebedero in English? It's
like a watering station?
Yeah, like a water source for wildlife.
Yeah. Síguele.
Okay, so yeah, those are part of like the program. Like once you start in the program as a producer, you have to do all these requirements. So it's
dije nomás 1%, plagas y es decir, los jardines.
So it's like the monitoring of this pledge, the camera trap to track wildlife and to see what's visiting the ranches, the water source for the wildlife, of course. We also make conservation gardens where they can use, as we call them here, bancos de germoplasma, which is like a place where you grow the plants and you get the seeds and you get like you get to choose which plants you want. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's it's pretty cool. It's actually they really like that, and we really like that. And
Yes.
all of those plants are designated to actually flower, so they are for sure gonna be food for the bats. And we also leave some cercos vivos, we call them here. So I think it will be living fence in English. That also are gonna be designated to flower for the bats, and that whole together makes 1% of the plants that they have on the crop.
So for anybody watching at home, the Circo Vivo, the living fence, it's like a fencing made out of agave, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so using fencing as agave plants so that you don't harvest them, so that they can actually be left to flower because they need to stay there to keep to maintain the fence line.
Yeah.
With the bancos, are you only planting maguey, or are you also planting other plants as well, other flowering plants, or is it just different types of agave?
No, it's just maguey.
Okay, but different types?
No, agave angustifolia specifically.
Okay, because I think that's one of the questions we had on Facebook from somebody watching also is what type of agave are you planting? So obviously, for everybody that doesn't know, agave angustifolia is I think it's the only agave that can be used for Baccanora legally, right?
Yes.
So is that the only agave plant that you guys that the Colectivo is working with, the farmers, or are they also planting other types of agave, or is it just angustifolia?
It's just agave angustifolia. Yeah, we just focus on that one, and it's because that's the plant that they are interested in. So for them to have seeds and to have more plants, like it's way better to have the same one that they're going to use for the Baccanora production. So yeah, it's agave angustifolia.
So, when people talk about like sustainable certifications and stuff for farmers, whether it's coffee or like organic certification for vegetables and food and stuff like that, a lot of times people talk about how organic can be very expensive and very hard for people to get certified and very strict. Have you had to deal with any farmers saying that it's too strict, or is that something that you guys think about and try very hard to make it a program that is kind of easy, not necessarily easy, but that is, it's very, it's people can follow it if they want to, that it's not too hard for people to get the certification?
Yes, of course. I mean, that's the main problem whenever you're doing these type of programs, right? Like try to find that middle point where everyone agrees to do it. So yes, we try to make it as easy as possible. It's also like the first approach of the Baccanora industry towards sustainability. We think that with the years to come, we were going to be able to modify even more and maybe be more strict. But for now, it's like the beginning of it. So this is like the basic things that we thought that was very important to have, and also to make like these relationships, to engage them in this. We have never heard of a producer telling us that it's a hard thing to do.
That's great.
Mostly because we go and do it every
Yes.
like we go and install everything, so you don't really have to do anything. And you do get the level of Baccanora, sustainable Baccanora. And also the other thing that you mentioned, that the traditional process, I think in our situation is the other way around. Like they are still doing it in a very traditional way. So in terms for like the certification of the Norma Oficial Mexicana del Baccanora, which is another certification from the government, you do have to modify that traditional process in order to get that certification. But we don't get in the aspect of the process itself.
Right.
Like, yeah, like that's
right. It's just it's the frontline stuff, like the up to being harvested, that you guys focus on. Yeah.
Yeah, directly on the ecological part.
That was the other question I had, because you just mentioned them. Was it difficult to get the Consejo to buy into the program, or were they very open about it? What was that? Because I've heard, and just my own experience working in Mexico, is that you know, just sometimes working with Consejo or other regulatory bodies in Mexico can be very, very difficult. Even if it's good intentions, there's so much paperwork and loopholes that you have to go through and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, was the Consejo helpful in getting it organized?
Totally. We start like trying to get into the Baccanora's word since the beginning, going to the meetings for the producers, going to different things. So it is weird to see like we were 23 at the moment, pink hair, and like everyone is wearing like boots and hats and everything. We're like, they can recognize us. So we start going to their meetings since the beginning, and one day I think we were like, what do you is there something like environmental aspect on the certification of Baccanora? And they were like, maybe not. So we're like, we can help you. So that's how we like, I think we start getting this like relation with them, because like, oh, the girls for the bats, the bats.
The bad
So
girls.
yeah. And they were really, really helpful for us. They helped us a lot because they are giving us this like, se puede decir como la identidad legal, ¿no? Acá como
Like officially or legal identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like legitimizing you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and they're very amazing. They're very amazing people. We became friends with them. They really believe and support everything that we do, and we have a lot of meetings with them. So it has never been difficult, our relationship with them. And also because they are too concerned about the ecological part and the sustainability part, but they don't have like the capacity to address those issues. So for us was like, okay, that's fine. Like we can do it. Like you don't have to do anything. We can do it. We just need to come and talk to you and see if you agree, and yeah, and try to back up us or support us like by being the entity that you guys already are. So yeah, it's a very cool collaboration right there. We always help them with whatever we can, and they always help us with whatever they can as well. And yeah, basically that's how we started a relationship. We just went to every meeting that we could. Like it was Baccanora, let's go. Festival de Baccanora, let's go. Like everywhere. And so yeah, and they spotted us, and yeah, they're very nice
also
people.
invite us to do like expositions of the Festival de Baccanora. And that's how we get more involved with the Baccanora producers too. Because we were presenting this, like, you know that bats feed on agave, and agave, there's like all the information. They were like, oh, so that's how we start like getting this context out also with the producers.
Was there already, you just kind of mentioned something that I was a little bit curious about. I would assume there is, but I'm going to ask anyway. Was there already a pretty strong knowledge of the relationships between the bats and the agave plants for the producers, or was it something that they knew about, but not quite how important the two things are to each other?
There was not very much knowledge about it, which is very cool because we got to tell them, like, you know what, plants, agaves are actually being pollinated by bats. And people were like, what? Like, are you serious? I have a cave like very close to my ranch. I didn't know. Like I used to kill them. You get all sorts of comments. But it's very cool that they actually get surprised about it.
I will just add, like, you know, but to making any this Baccanora, you need to cut the flower stalk. So they're not usually like looking at the flowers and something that is feeding, because they usually cut it out, because for producing agaves, the sugars need to store on the vase. If the sugars go up, it is not the same. So that's one of the things why I would say they haven't had like the idea, because they usually cut it up.
That totally makes sense. I mean, obviously I know how that works, but I didn't really make that connection that if you're cutting it before it flowers, you wouldn't really pay attention to what's happening when it does flower, you know? You did mention the caves, and somebody on Facebook was mentioning about the caves. So for anybody who doesn't know, can you just kind of explain why the area around Sonora, both southern and even northern Sonora, for I think two different kinds of bats, but why the area of Sonora is so important and why the bats migrate through there and how the caves kind of play a role in it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Well, in Sonora, on the eastern part of Sonora, we have the Sierra Madre Occidental, which is a very important wildlife corridor for a lot of species, not just bats. We see the jaguars, we see the monarch butterfly, a lot of different species. So, yeah, for instance, that's like the role that it plays on different migrations. Is, like I said before, it's not just bat migration. There are a lot of animals passing through, plants as well, that of course will not migrate, but they are on the Sierra Madre and a very endemic part of it. So that's like the key part, I think, that the state plays in these migrations, that we have that very big wildlife corridor going on. And then you have, well, the Sierra Madre, of course, it's like a large mountain cordillera.
Mountain range, yeah.
What? Sorry?
Mountain range, cordillera is a
Yeah.
mountain.
Yes.
Yeah.
So of course it's full with caves. So specifically in the bat, when they migrate, they are using these caves to, like, as refugees, as they go all the way from southern Arizona to Oaxaca. So they use these caves as refugees for it. Sorry. And there's also some other caves, like the one that we have in Alamos, which is in the southern part of Sonora, but it's a maternity cave. We also have another one in the Pinacate, which is in the northern part of Sonora, that play the role as maternity caves. So we have these different caves with different dynamics and different species of bats using them for different reasons, but all of them are among the wildlife corridor. So I don't know if you want to add.
I would just add this: the species that we work with is the lesser long-nosed bat, and
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, the reason of this, like Leah said, maternity caves, the ones that do the migrations are the females, because they're going to reproduce to the other caves, and when they come back, they have their pups, so they need to have this, like Leah said, maternity caves, and also these transition caves for it to protect their babies.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the refugees caves that I was talking about, they're called transition caves.
Oh, okay. So the refuge caves are not the maternity caves. They're different ones.
There are two types: is a transition cave and the maternity caves.
Okay, and the transition caves are just caves that they stop in along the way, and then the maternity caves are the ones that they end at.
Yeah.
Okay, and you said there's two maternity. Oh, go ahead.
Keep going.
I was gonna say, so, and you said there's two maternity caves, right? One in the south by Alamos, and then one way up north. Okay.
Yeah, those are like the main ones and more important ones. Of course, there's a lot to explore. Sonora is not very much explored in terms of caves. In terms of not very much things, actually. For us, because we get to play a lot, and we get to learn a lot, and but yeah, those are like the main ones, the one that we have in the Pinacate and the one that we have in Alamos.
And actually, those both areas are natural protected areas. So that's why it's recognized, and there's a federally protected area. And there's some organizations, also government agencies, that work in it and do like the monitoring and see how the populations are when they are there, and not just those ones, also the local ones, because it's known that they can share, like different species of bats can share the same cave.
And if anybody, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, if there was a difference between, the caves that in the south and the caves in the north, or if they're both the lesser long-nosed, the lesser nosed bats, or what. But it sounds like they're both the same type of bat that you guys are working with. And then you also have the long-nosed fruit bat, which travels through there as well, right?
The long nose, yeah, it travels more on the part of Chihuahua.
Okay, so that's when I lived in Austin, Texas, the bats underneath the caves was like a big tourist attraction and stuff. So those
Yes.
are the long-nosed bats, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So further east, and then further west, you have the lesser known. Okay.
Yeah.
And if anybody's not familiar with pinacate, just look it up, Google it. It looks like the moon. You would never think that anything
Yes.
is there. And it's this old, incredible. If you watched our episode with Rodrigo Medellin, we talked a lot about it. And it's just really just barren environment, but there's like these huge cave systems because it's an old volcanic field. And it's just really a fascinating, I think it's a UNESCO site as well.
Yes.
It's just really interesting and really fascinating. So please do go and check that out. One last kind of random question I had, and this is just for my own curiosity. I know that you guys work a little bit. We talked about kind of like water systems and springs and stuff like that you guys work on studying. And obviously I'm from the northern part of the Sonoran Desert where it's much drier than it is down in Alamos. But mezcal production, Baccanora production, it takes a lot of water, right? Because you have to ferment, and that takes a massive amount of water. Is water an issue at all, or is it a pretty plentiful resource in the area around Baccanora?
It's a very good question.
I think I will start with the denomination of origin. Sonora has 72 municipalities, which just 35 have the denomination of origin of Baccanora. So they just these ones can produce Baccanora. That's an important thing. So water, it is all the time is a problem, I would say. But it depends on what area you are. Because in Alamos, it is not a big problem. But for example, this past year with the drought has been really, really bad. So we're in the desert. So yeah, water is always a problem, and there is not that much water. It depends where you are. If you go more south, you will be able to find more water. But in the north, will be hard.
Yeah, I mean, like Valeria says, water is always an issue to think about the source. The thing with Baccanora crops or agave crops is that most of them are not being irrigated. Most of them, they just, since they're native plants, they get just the rainwater, which is good, but they do use a lot in the process of fermentation. So what they do is they have pozos.
Wells.
Yeah. Yes, they have wells concessions. I do have the knowledge that in the state, the government is not giving any new concessions. So yeah, so they are exploiting the same water source that they were before. And they're not opening anything new.
So when you say the concessions, you mean like the permission to dig a new well?
Yeah.
Yes, there are no more permits. So if you want to get a new one, you have to close one and then open the other one, which is kind of good because you do have a little bit of control over that. And some producers, what they do is that they share the same well. In order to make the Baccanora. Yeah. Also, since it's not like a really huge production of Baccanora, like it's not like an industrial production. Well, they don't use like very large quantities of water. But yeah, I don't know. That's a very good question.
It is really artisanal, actually, because of the amount they produce.
Yeah. There's definitely. I haven't seen any large commercial production.
Yes.
Everything I see is very, very small production levels for sure. Well, we're coming right up against our time. I want to make it easy on my friend Mary, who's in the back producing and is going to edit this down. So I will say thank you very much. I will ask one last small question, and that is, what if anybody, honestly, this is one of for people that watch it live, this is probably one of the biggest live audiences we've seen. Most people watch it after we put it on YouTube or Facebook. What's the easiest place for people to follow what you guys are doing?
Okay, well, we are on Instagram, Facebook as Colectivo Sonora Silvestre, and you can also find us at our website, which is Senko with a C and a K .org. You can watch there also the other projects that the other people in the organization are doing, which are pretty cool as well. And yeah, that's how you can find us.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for joining me. You guys, you're doing really, really incredible work. And I really look forward to connecting with you guys more in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the space.
Yeah, for the invitation.
My
Yeah.
pleasure. You guys are doing incredible work. It's so exciting to see energetic, very ambitious people, students doing really incredible work to further long-term sustainability. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.